Hey everyone, and welcome back to Pastor Paul's Daily Devotional. You're here, I'm here, let's do this. So it's Wednesday, and I want to thank you so much for liking and for sharing these videos. So this week we're continuing on by looking together at Ephesians chapter 6 verses 5 through 9. And in the first two lessons I briefly addressed the context around slavery as a sin, and historically both here in the United States, in the West culture, and in first century Greco-Roman culture. So now we want to jump into the text where the Apostle Paul here addresses slaves there in verses 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then verse 9, he addresses masters. And so I want to give you the big idea and then just talk a little bit about that. So I believe the big idea is whatever your role, serve wholeheartedly and respectfully because you're serving the Lord. Whatever your role, serve wholeheartedly and respectfully because you're serving the Lord. And so scholars have pointed out that this text can, in a sense, correlate. Okay, it can be connected to, not neatly, not perfectly, but there's a lot of similarities to our work relations today, right? Between the different power differentials between bosses and employees, between teachers and students, in relationships where there is structure, there is order, there are responsibilities and expectations. And so again, it doesn't, correlate perfectly, but there's a lot of overlap here in this text that can speak into our work lives. Now, this is whether your work is compensated or non-compensated, right? There's lots of stay-at-home parents, grandparents, that are doing great work, volunteer work, hard work, that they're not compensated. This, of course, applies to people who are both business owners, self-employed, people that work for an established employer, a large corporation, the military, a defense contractor, teachers that work for school systems and administrators, civil servants, medical workers that have to report to hospital administrators and a hospital board. The list goes on and on and on. But the idea here is when it comes to whatever our work is, whatever our role, compensated, uncompensated, self-employed, or a boss or a leader that employs people, or an employee that works in a system, we're to serve wholeheartedly and respectfully because we ultimately serve God. And so the point that Paul makes here in this passage is that we work for God. We don't work for our bosses, we don't work for our employees, we don't work for the board, we don't work for the publicly traded corporation. We don't work for the institution. Ultimately, we work for God, who is the Lord and Savior of all things. Jesus is Lord of all. He has dominion over every square inch of this planet, over every workplace, over every work environment, whether employed, unemployed. He has dominion and authority over your work, and so you work for Him. So when you're annoyed by your coworkers, when you're annoyed by those you serve, your stakeholders, you're annoyed by your boss, you're annoyed by your employees, whatever the case may be, or annoyed by yourself as self-employed, you need to see Jesus. You work for Him. You work for Jesus. You work for Him. And that's going to reframe the whole way we view our vocation, which is from the word vocare, Latin, calling. You work for God. God is the one that created you. God is the one that gave you unique skills and abilities. God is the one, if you're a Christian, who has redeemed your soul, who has cleansed you of sin, who has given you the power and the ability to work with joy and satisfaction and generosity and excellence. And so you report to Him. And you need to be reminded of that. We work for Him. And so He's the one that we're going to have to give account to. You're not going to give account to your spouse. You're not going to give account to your boss. One day at the end of time in the final judgment, you're going to give account of your life, every aspect, including your work life, to God. And we're all going to be judged by the same standard, whether or not we were clothed in the righteousness of Christ and did our work for Him. So I want you to remember that. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow, and we talk about what does it mean to serve wholeheartedly, and then Friday, what does it mean to serve respectfully. So anyway, looking forward to it. God bless. See you then.